And we can just dance the night away until we get no more. I'll shake all the hurt away so you can feel and forget who you used to be. For just tonight, could you just dance, dance the night away?
My name is Maddie, and I am here to honestly help people have better relationships with themselves and with food. And I think that if you want a better relationship with food, you have to have a better relationship with yourself. And I think the work that will give us a more peaceful life and a better life and a life that we're actually excited about starts with ourselves. So, dieting can so I want to talk about dieting today. And I want to talk about how dieting is like a toxic relationship because it really is. It's so toxic. So, okay. So dieting can feel like a toxic relationship, right? There's full of rules, there's guilt, broken promises, that just leave us feeling worse and not better. So I want to share how diet culture keeps us stuck in the cycle of control and shame, and why healing your relationship with food starts with trust and not restriction. And if you've ever felt like on and off with food, hopefully this perspective might change the way that you see food and your relationship with yourself. So, the same thing that can keep us stuck in toxic relationships also keep us stuck in diet culture. And so, if we want to end the cycle, we have to see dieting for what it really is, right? When we're in it, it's hard to see clearly, right? We instead see hope or promise, and this time it's going to be different, right? We kind of have that energy going into dieting and honestly, maybe even relationships too. So once we start to recognize the patterns and the cycles, we can start to see the impact this is actually having on us. But if we don't recognize the patterns and the cycles, it's really hard to get out. So hopefully I will help you see the patterns. That's the goal. So, n so So you know how in a toxic relationship there's this promise we believe of maybe they will change or I can help fix them, right? Or maybe I'm probably the problem, even if you're clearly not the problem, right? Or maybe it's I've been here for so long I can't leave. But really these beliefs are keeping you stuck. And with dieting, it's these false beliefs that keep us stuck thinking, this one's going to be different, or I just have to try harder, or I'm going to be more committed to the next diet, right? And just like in a toxic relationship, when it doesn't work, we don't say, this relationship was unhealthy. Instead, we ask, what's wrong with me, right? And when diets don't work, we don't assume that the diet is the problem. We assume that something is wrong with us. And when it ends, you blame yourself and not the system, right? But those beliefs are actually keeping you stuck. They are keeping us participating in diet culture even when it's hurting us. Because we believe dieting and weight loss will make us happier, right? More confident, more accepted, healthier, admired. I mean, all of those positive things that we believe about dieting, that's why we're doing it, right? And life will finally click into place when we're at a weight that we love. So, but sometimes we have to take a step back and see diets for what they really are so that they can lose their appeal, right? And like, what even is the appeal of dieting, right? And it starts with hope, right? This one's going to be different. This one's going to give me what I want. And then there's a honeymoon phase, right? There's structure. Maybe people praise you. There's control. You get compliments, and then there's a sense of the rules tightening. Maybe you feel anxious, obsessed, or you feel like you're failing. We blame ourselves. And I would ask, doesn't that cycle sound familiar? Maybe there's excitement in a new relationship. We have a honeymoon phase where they're perfect, right? And then maybe things start to feel kind of slightly off, but it used to be good. So we just have to make it good again. We just have to get back to how it was, right? And so we're holding onto the hope of what worked short term, of what worked in the beginning, right? But the reality is that, you know, we can't get back to that. We can't get back to that in a relationship, and we're not going to get back to that with dieting. So what is dieting actually getting us? And for a lot of people, it looks like dieting looks like feeling out of control with food. It looks like feeling guilty. It looks like feeling like a failure, skipping social things because of foods or tying your self-worth to the number on the scale. Right? Maybe it's feeling disconnected from yourself, fear of being judged by your food choices, feeling afraid of being hungry or afraid of being full, right? There's obsessive food thoughts. If you break a rule, that leads to you eating even more, or maybe even binge eating, just to name a few things, right? And so that is the reality. That is what dieting is giving us. And I think that we need to be honest with ourselves for a moment. Has dieting really ever given you what it's promised? Did that toxic relationship ever change? Did it ever go back to the way that it was in the beginning? Right? And if we look at, maybe qualities of a toxic relationship, there's things like love bombing, right? Which could look like, um, you know, quick fixes in dieting world, right? The before and after photos. Or maybe there's control in a toxic relationship, and that could look like in dieting food rules or tracking or restriction. Maybe in a toxic relationship, you're walking on eggshells, and in dieting, that could look like fear of social events or vacations or even hunger in dieting, right? There's gaslighting in a toxic relationship, and that could look like, you know, in diet culture, like you just don't want it badly enough. You just need more willpower, and that's just not true. And then maybe even like breaking up and going back to a toxic relationship, right? In dieting, it could look like I'm going to start again on Monday. I just need something new. I'm going to try again, right? We kind of keep coming back to that. And ending a diet can really feel like ending a relationship, right? And we're sad not because it was good, but because you hoped it would finally fix everything. And that's sad, right? But that's just not the reality. And the patterns don't change no matter how hard we try and no matter how long we do it, right? That is the reality. And I would ask, is that really what we want, right? And my goal here is to encourage you to see the cycles, because if we can see the cycles and know how it ends, then maybe we won't even want to go down that path because we already know where it leads. So I think that we can step aside and see diets for what they really are so that they lose their appeal. And then we can be empowered to choose something better for ourselves because we don't believe the lies. And I think that that's where empowerment really comes from, not believing the lies anymore and choosing something better for ourselves. So if we want to get free from dieting, we have to start changing our beliefs about what diets will give us. And if we want to be in a healthy relationship, we have to change what we believe, a relationship can give us too. So if you're thinking, okay, but what else is there, right? There is a better way to live, right? We don't have to keep blaming ourselves because dieting didn't fail because you lacked willpower or you needed to try harder, right? It failed because it requires disconnection from your body. And in healthy relationships with people and with food, right? A healthy relationship is built on trust and not control. And if a relationship requires you to ignore your own needs to make it work, we would call that unhealthy. And so with food, it really shouldn't be any different. So, what does health look like? So, a healthy relationship is built on trust and not control, right? So, if you think about a healthy relationship, we typically don't feel like we're being monitored, right? There's this freedom between two people, and you trust that they aren't going to hurt you and that they have your best interest. And we can relate to this with food because we can trust our body's hunger and fullness cues. And when we do that, we don't have to micromanage every bite, and we don't have to have this belief that food is out to get you or your body is out to get you, right? The idea behind this is that maybe we can start to trust ourselves more instead of trying to dominate and have this rigid control. Another thing about healthy relationships is a sense of respect instead of punishing. So, in a healthy relationship, you don't punish somebody for simply making a mistake, right? Just because you had one bad day, that doesn't mean that the whole relationship is ruined, right? We know that as humans, we have bad days and we have good days. Like, that is just part of life. And when we have bad days and when we get comfort from the other person, in that relationship, that feels good and that's nurturing for the relationship, right? And another thing about healthy relationships is that we don't use shame to motivate within the relationship, right? Instead, kindness is used or even understanding when we're communicating. And how this relates to food is that when we do eat past fullness, right, or maybe we have a binge or we do something that we didn't want to do, that doesn't mean that we have to restrict the next day. Or if we eat one less, nutritious meal, that doesn't mean that that we're just like this moral failure for the whole day or the whole week is ruined because we know it's okay to have a bad day. We know we're going to make mistakes. Like we can't be perfect. We know that. And if we want to have a healthy relationship with ourselves and with food, we have to, you know, we have to be kind and caring towards ourselves and comfort ourselves and not be shaming ourselves. And to me, that is what health looks like, right? Part of being in a healthy relationship is that you respond with curiosity instead of being critical. And if you think about a healthy relationship, we want to be curious about the other person. We want to know about them because we care about them. And I wonder, what if we did that for ourselves? If we were having a hard day or an off day, instead of punishing ourselves and shaming ourselves and talking down to ourselves and telling us that we're a failure and we can't do anything right and on and on and on, we just, go at ourselves. What if we were more like, I don't know, it sounds profound, but like, what if we were kind towards ourselves? And what if we were like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, what do you need right now? Like, what if we talked to ourselves in a way that we like promoted healing within ourselves? Because I think responding to ourselves when we like us helps improve the relationship that we have with ourselves and helps to develop this healthy relationship with us. And I have more thoughts about this. I could talk about this forever. So maybe I'll make another video, but if we want to have a healthy relationship with ourselves, which includes food, instead of asking, how do I control myself or how do I control food, maybe the question is, how do I care for myself or how do I care for myself with food? And if any of this content resonates with you, I would say that you don't need a different diet, right? Another diet isn't going to help you, but I think that we need different relationships. And so if dieting has felt like a toxic relationship for you, like you don't have to keep going back, right? You don't have to keep going back to that cycle. And if you're ready to explore what it would look like to build trust within your body instead of controlling it, that is the work that I want to do. I feel so passionately about that, and I want to keep making videos. I want to explore how I can help people kind of change that mindset. I think that's really important because I believe that we all deserve relationships that feel safe. And I think that that includes the one with ourself. I would think that it starts with the one with ourself, right? And you can learn more about this in the link below. And but yeah, I just appreciate you watching my video. And the last thing I want to say, because I think that it's something that we all need to hear, but we are all reliable narrators for our own lives. And I think that we need to trust that about ourselves and start having a little bit of self-trust and connecting with ourselves to start to heal the relationship with ourselves. So, thanks so much for watching.